I don't care who won the Chiefs. I hate it here. Make me sick. My allergy. Puke every time. Blah, like that. Puke.
Well, you're a goalie. You're supposed to be like that.
Things we care about, and since the Predators are your team, you want to start that off?
Sure. Well, tonight was a pretty disappointing loss for those of you just jumping into the podcast. It's the day after Christmas, and this evening the Predators travel to St. Louis to take on a vastly improved Blues team. And the Predators, I got Saints on the brain for some reason. Predators have had good success against St. Louis leading up to this year, but with St. Louis finally having a real goaltender in Yaroslav Halak, what you had this evening was a 2-0 shutout of the Preds, where basically they threw everything but the kitchen sink at Halak, and he stopped it all. The one shot that got past Pecorine was just one of these perfectly labeled top corner shots snuck between his head, his glove, and the corner. And good defensive hockey play by both teams. Any offensive chance seen was a very worthy one. And a lot of good juicy rebounds were swallowed up by the defense and cleared out. So it's just one of those losses. You can't really blame it on anyone other than the fact that the Predators have not been able to generate a whole ton of offense this year, which has been somewhat perplexing. But by the same token, when you cycle back about 3 or 4 years to when they had guys like Paul Correa and when Jason Arnott hadn't become slow and old, they were able to churn out 5-6 goals a night. Now the Preds are almost a defensive club on an old New Jersey level, where they'll keep it close, but your typical final is going to be 2-1, 3-2, overtime, shootout, blah, 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 blah. So that's a disappointing loss to be sure, but it's just one of those things. The slightly concerning thing is this is the 4th loss in a row for the Predators, one of which includes a rather embarrassing loss at home to the mighty Osh Senators. So it'd be nice to see them right the ship. Anyway, as of this evening, they're 1 point out of the 8th and final playoff spot, but this is a rather steep plummet from 4 games ago when they were securely in the number 4 slot. So,
well, actually, I'm just looking at the Western Conference standings. You're right; they're only 1 point out of 8th, but they're also only 3 points out of 4th. So the West is pretty well packed.
Indeed, and just kind of glancing over at the conference standings here, as through the magic of the internet, we pull that up very quickly. Everything is very tightly bunched. Detroit has 48 points, Nashville has 40, and you've got Detroit, Dallas, and Vancouver all within 3 points of each other, and top to bottom, you've only got a 4-point spread. So the conference is still fairly tightly bunched. The only teams that seem completely out of it would be teams like Edmonton, Calgary, Minnesota. Even Columbus still has an outside shot, but they're beginning to get losses in bunches, which does not speak well for their long-term prospects. But just a quick rundown in the West. You got Detroit at the top, as we're used to seeing. You have the very surprising Dallas Stars, who were supposed to be rebuilding this year, who are in second with a bullet at 46 points, and that's a little hard to understand. But by the same token, they have some much more stable goaltending in Kari Lehtonen. And it appears that even with the departure of Mike Modano and a relatively young and one would expect to be unstable blue line, they instead are getting plenty of veteran leadership out of guys like Brad Richards and Stefan Ovidas. So, good for them. I frankly expected another Mark Crawford-styled implosion, but that's not what happened. So, then those are the sort of major highlights in the Western Conference. I'm going to kick this back over to you at this point because your mighty New York Rangers are in the playoff if the season ended today, which is not exactly where we expected them to be even a couple of games ago.
No, not at all. They're playing better than I thought. They've had some really tough struggles this year, but they're last year when they started out, I think it was something like 7-0-1, and then they finished with a similar record along that before losing out on the last playoff spot on the last day of the season to the Philly Flyers, who went on that hot streak. Their problem was the middle of the season. I knew when they started off so well that it wasn't sustainable. They weren't that good of a team. This year they've had some ups and downs, but they're generally trending in the right direction, and their play is sustainable, which I think is much more important. They're not a streaky team. They're not winning 8-9 in a row. They're not losing 8-9 in a row. but they're going to be up and down because they just don't have enough talent. They have a very hard-working team, very disciplined team. They're trying to build an identity. If you ever listen to John Tortorella in any of his post-game comments or even on his MSG show now that he does behind the bench, he's always talking about an identity, and they have that identity. Hard-working team, strong defensively, opportunistic on offense, and of course it all sort of builds out from Lundqvist in goal, and he's evened out his play quite a bit. What they don't have, though, is just some top-end talent. Their best player offensively should be Marian Gaborik. He missed about 10 games with a shoulder problem. He missed the last game with a strained groin, and the difference between him and in or out of the lineup, it's kind of hard to tell. He's disappeared a lot. He had one good game where he had a hat trick. Beyond that, he's not been a factor, and that's the biggest problem they have right now. They're in a really tough division. You know, the East right now is a lot like the West. They're just bunched up. The Rangers at the moment are in 7th place with 42 points. They're 3rd place in their division following Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, which are probably two of the hottest teams in the East. So I think that's where you're looking at the Rangers. They're going to be in a battle all year for that sort of 5th, 6th, 7th spot. That's kind of
a couple of quick follow-up questions on that. Well, let me actually a remark first. The nice thing for the Rangers is, given the fact that they are in the same division with the mighty Islanders and equally powerful Devils, they seem like a lock to finish 3rd in the division. I think it's probably a good place for them to hang out. If they can sneak up a spot, great. But let's keep things in perspective. But you mentioned the lack of quote unquote marquee talent. Do they have the scoring punch on their second and third lines to make up for the disappearance of Gaborik in these 5-10 game stretches?
They have been. They've really managed to be opportunistic and get that secondary scoring. That took actually a big hit, though, when Ryan Callahan went down for 4 to 6 weeks with a broken hand. He really had stepped up his game, probably from about the Olympics of last year. When he made the U.S. Olympic team, it was a big vote of confidence. He saw that he could play with players at that level, and it's really carried through. Losing him has been a really big challenge for the Rangers. They're being able to pick it up with people here and there. It's somebody different every night. Dubinsky's come through. Derek Stepan, he's probably the story of the season so far. He's got 10 goals, rookie center. He's just around the puck a lot. When you see him play, he doesn't do anything spectacular. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He's not the most gifted scorer necessarily, but he's just one of those guys that's got a nose for the puck, and he's really been stepping up his game. So yeah, they are getting that secondary scoring and chipping in guys like Brandon Prost, who's been a revelation for that team. He was a throw-in last year in the Chris Higgins for, who was the player that they got for him? Olli Jokinen. He was a throw-in to come over with Jokinen, who the Rangers let go and has subsequently gone back to Calgary. Prost is the kind of player. He's the prototypical Tortorella player this year. He's first guy in on the forecheck, plays every aspect, power play occasionally, he plays penalty killing, even strength, 3rd, 4th line. They're just rolling their players through. They're picking up here and there. There's really been nobody who stepped up. Eric Christensen will come up one night or 2 nights in a row and play. Then you get Stepan. But there's nobody sort of taking the team by the horns and leading it. They're just doing it as a team, which is great, and that's really what they're building. But again, in this league, talent is going to win out. You look at teams like the Flyers and Pittsburgh that the Rangers are chasing, and they just don't match up talent-wise with those teams.
Fair enough. Well, let's stay in the East for just a second. We're going to go a little out of order here, but one of the things you tweeted about this evening is a turnout of 3,100 at Nassau Coliseum to watch the Isles and the Habs. Now, granted, we'll chalk that up to the rather inconvenient blizzard that has shut down the Eagles and Vikings tonight, among other things. But it goes without saying the Isles have a tremendous attendance problem. Part of it is the building. Part of it is the location of the building. And realistically, one would not expect the NHL to seriously entertain moving the Islanders out of the New York area. But what needs to happen in that neck of the woods for those of us that don't live in the New York in the tri-state area? when you see attendance numbers like you do with the Isles, if it was anywhere else in the country, people would be out with pitchforks and torches saying move them out, and cities like Kansas City, Portland, and Winnipeg and Quebec would be bring them here. So what's going on the island, and what needs to happen to iron that out?
Well, like anything else, winning attracts a crowd. Winning attracts excitement. Obviously, it's going on 30 years now, but the Islanders when they are winning, will generate excitement. They can own that area. They're just not a good team. I mean, part of it is right now. You talk about the building, the Nassau Mausoleum, as they call it, instead of Nassau Coliseum. Charles Wang, the owner of the team, is in a fight with state and county officials trying to get what they call the Lighthouse Project built, which would be a shopping mall, an entertainment area, and part of that would be the arena, a new arena for the Islanders. That's been shot down, obviously, with municipal budgets being what they are on state budgets. That's just not happening, and he is not putting any money into the team. I just saw something today. He's saying it's not for sale, but what he wants to do with it, no one really knows. The lease goes for about another 3 years, I believe, after this season, and sort of all bets are off after that. The problem is, I mean, they're actually, they fired their coach. They fired Scott Gordon. They brought in Capuano from their AHL team. They started off slowly, but they've won a couple of games lately. They won tonight. They beat the Montreal Canadiens 4-1. They're not a great team. They were never going to be a great team. They were never really likely to threaten for a playoff spot. They were the kind of team that if everything went well, they could sort of be, a 10th, 11th, 12th place team. They were sort of fighting for the upper end of the non-playoff teams. Everything has not gone according to plan. They've been a lot of injuries. Mark Streit has been out all season. Kyle Poxo has been out all season. Those are two of their best players right there, and you just can't compete with what they have. They also have their goaltending problems. Their century-long contract on Rick DiPietro is not proving to be a winner. He's injured again. He was not very good when he was playing. And so this is the consequences. You have a bad building. You have a team that's really not putting any resources into it, and they're just not producing on the ice. If that turns around, the people will come. The fan base is there. The Long Island fan base is definitely going to support this team, but they need something to support. And right now, it's not even a minor league quality product they're putting out there on a nightly basis.
Do you think there's any possibility with the New Jersey Nets new arena going up in Brooklyn that it would be even entertained that they might move the team off of Long Island and into Brooklyn?
I don't know about into Brooklyn. I don't think in the Atlantic Yards project, but there is talk around that you see a bit that they might do something out in Queens and perhaps put an arena in next to Citi Field, the home of the Mets. Now, people who aren't familiar with that area, Queens and Long Island, geographically one piece, so it makes some sense to do that. As you know, the arena is just down the middle of nowhere right now. Putting it in Queens, I think, would definitely help. You would still keep the traditional fan base, the Nassau County fan base, but you'd make it a lot easier for people in Queens or even from parts of Brooklyn to come out to it. That's probably their best bet. The likelihood of that happening, again, with the way the economy's going, is New York City going to build an arena for them? I find that hard to believe.